All right, we are live. We're about to do a video on Peter Joseph. Right. Before we get started, don't forget to share, support, hopefully donate to Devon's Journey to Recovery, to helping victims of Africom and the drone striking, helping out Cohen Daly, the Australian boy who has cancer. Also, don't forget to help out some content creators, Stevie, aka Red Economics, aka Fred, and also Sleepy J. Get him a coffee. It's for helping him out. Real life, not really about coffee. Shh. Shh. All right, so the name of this video it's from Revolution Now, which is Peter Joseph's, I guess, podcast video channel thing. And he's going to talk some shit about systems and its effect on people. And I'm going to react to it. Here we go.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. This is Peter Joseph, and welcome to episode 27 of Revolution Now. The date is August 13th, 2021.
Just so you know, he started with an Alan Watts clip. Alan Watts audio.
This podcast is usually uploaded every Wednesday Pacific time, but upload dates tend to bounce around a little bit these days, and I appreciate everybody's patience in that regard. The opening audio was from Alan Watts, a Western philosopher from the 1960s, who had wise intuitions in regard to many social phenomena. Definitely a counterculture icon, and when you look past some of the vague, fluffy language and institutional associations, when it comes to free creative thought, Watts is always delightful to read and listen to. Very in tune with what has been happening in the world in many ways. And he touches upon a few things that are a good setup for the main purpose of today's podcast, which is about the endogenous nature of capitalism as a system and why the system seeks to expand or grow, like effectively cancer, by force of its very structure.
Now, as far as I understand, cancer has its own volition, right? Its own, in a way, willpower to move and shit and like to do things, as opposed to a system, right, which requires people to operate in it in order for it to even be a system, in order for it to actually do anything, right? To like actually continue moving. Just saying. Here we go.
Combining procedural, cultural, and psychological incentives. Meaning, when people speak...
That word works. Incentive as like, this could be pushing people to behave a certain way. But even though I don't even like that word pushing, you could say it's an influence amongst other influences, right? In fact, there's influences that happen before the system influence part happens, right? But all right, here we go.
Today about economic growth, as is very common in the news media. Reports on jobs and GDP performance have served as barometers of economic health. Fortunately, at least at a minimum, there is an emerging subculture in the sustainability community that does see GDP as a false correlation for social well-being and progress. And I guess that's a step in the right direction. But the observation isn't acute, as such analysts tend to not understand what they're talking about when it comes to why growth is of interest at all in the deepest structural sense. Some even imply that our growth-based economy is a kind of social decision, and we can just kind of change our attitude and change that process within the structure of capitalism, the degrowth movement, as it were, which, of course, is completely delusional. You can't have...
Now, you can keep what is in place now, or at least what people call the actual tenets of capitalism, and as far as on a moral scale, will work out fine. Because it's about the people being moral. That's what dictates whether someone's maliciously harming other people for personal gain and whatnot. Right? That's the dictator of that. Is that the most efficient way to go about it? Probably not. Right? I'd probably rather have a a system that kind of works autonomously in regards to dishing out resources in a way, right? Or you could say you could just say money, right? I'd rather have you are in this, income range, so you pay this amount in taxes, and all the taxes are allocated to this place, and on and so forth, right? That works. That'd probably be more efficient than each individual person saying, okay, let me calculate how much money I make, and then I'll figure out how much money I should give to whatever schools or roads or whatever. Right? Occupy, what's up? Misanthropic and out of coffee. What's up? Daniel Pinchback is good. I don't. I think Peter Joseph makes a very good efficiency argument. The problem is, I said this earlier in my Discord, he skips steps, right? You skipped an initial step. The initial step is that you're going straight to an environment is causing people to behave this way. Thus, he can just continue on and make all types of, give you all the answers in the world because he started with that initial premise of we are our environment in regards to behavior. Like we are that thing. Right? Rather than us playing off of the environment and then reflecting it back to ourselves to dictate a behavior. It's environment, boom, in your psyche, and then behavior happens. It seems that way. In fact, Jacques Fresco is one of those, has outright said, no such thing as free will, right? And I'm not gonna say that they believe the exact same thing, but I mean the emphasis and focus on this makes me believe that you're coming from an environmental kind of materialist sense of how humans behave, and I'll get to why that could be spooky, at least for me. All right, here we go.
Have market economics without the drive for cancerous growth on the system level. It's inherent or endogenous to it. One fallback is, well,
right, that notion right there, that it's inherent, endogenous to it, that notion alone already denounces this thing we call free will because it's people operating within the system. In fact, people are the system in a way. Yeah. Right? No people, no system. Correct? Capitalism doesn't get up on its legs and start running around. It's like, okay, let me start doing this, this, and this. Right? It's people doing those things. Now, if we say the system is inherently this, you're saying that the human is inherently this. If the human is inherently this, then that'd be kind of making a statement, a determinist. Yeah, that would be making a determinist statement about who and what a human is, which is kind of ironic because I think Peter Joseph would make the argument that humans are just malleable by their environment. So this is why I have questions for the guy. And there's an importance behind the, like, if you skip steps, I'm telling you, like, why that's very important because it could lead to something dangerous down the line. But all right, let's keep playing this. What's up, Lucky Burrito?
Okay, population keeps growing, therefore the economy must keep growing, and there's your connection.
Amy, what's up, Amy?
That's actually a very small attribute of it. Even if population did not continue to grow, the growth imperative of market economics would still prevail. And generally, not to jump ahead, we see the pattern of seeking growth mainly because of the circular nature of the consumption to labor cycle. If there's no demand, there is no job. And if there's no job, there's no way to get purchasing power to spend back into the system, keeping everything going in an infinite loop. I've always referred.
Buy this car to drive to work to pay for this car. Metric nailed it. Before Zeitgeist.
Referred to this as the cyclical
I
consumption
think before Zeitgeist. It
process
might
by
be in a
which the
similar
entire
time period.
economy of global capitalism is powered. And again, I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment,
Mariana.
in combination
That
with many
Mariana.
other forces which push for expansion and growth, in contrast to what's really required in all systems that exist that persist, and that is a steady state equilibrium, a steady state economy that is strategically organized not only to meet the needs of civilization, but also maintain homeostatic balance with the ecosystem, while also
That's where I would look to guys like this. I would look to a Peter Joseph because I do this first assessment of I think the guy means well. I truly believe that his goal is to make the world a better place. I truly believe. Might even be somewhat like me, to where it's like almost obsessive about it to some degree. Right? Not dangerously obsessive, but to some degree obsessive about it. And I truly believe he has that willpower, that moral willpower, that moral backbone to try and make things better. I truly believe that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I truly believe he has that. After that, it's like his efficiency argument in regards to systems, like, yo, this system is the best at making sure that the most people or everyone is taken care of, right? The goal is making sure everyone's taken care of. And his argument for that, like, he'd be one of the first guys I run to. I thought of that years ago when I looked at the whole Venus Project thing, right? I don't understand all the fucking science behind it and all that shit. All I saw was a vision of something. I'm like, oh, someone's fucking trying. I believe the guy means well, and it looks like he's fucking trying. So, yes, I'm definitely, if I became president tomorrow, right? Like, hey, someone call Peter Joseph up and really, like, dig into the questions. Like, is this plausible? This idea he's looking at in regards to an efficient system that takes care of everyone, is that possible? Obviously, right? For me, I'd be like, okay, this human thing needs to be taken care of as well. But, like, on top of that, having an efficient system that looks after everyone so we don't have to worry about it, right? If someone's underfed, it's easy to spot them out, right? Because it's so rare. Like, oh, they stand out like a sore thumb. This person's underfed. Hey, how come you're not getting food? I just didn't feel like getting up and going out and getting food right now. I just wanted to fucking watch Netflix or something. All right, that's your choice. Long as there's no like something inhibiting you from getting that, it's just you choosing not to go get the food. So, yes, here we go.
also, of course, maintaining balance with our shared needs and basic nature. There is such
I've
a
read
thing
some,
as a
Oz.
toxic
I've read some.
sociological condition, even though people like to look the other way.
All right, I
There
missed
is,
some
of
of that.
course, maintaining balance with our shared needs and basic nature. There is such a thing as a toxic sociological condition.
Basic physiological nature, right? On average, right? There is no peak human, but I'm sure it's along a spectrum of some people might need more calories than other people or whatever, right? Or some people can't be in the cold, or some people can't eat peanut butter or whatever the fuck, right? Definitely a spectrum there, and there's like okay, it seems like all humans seem to fit in this little spectrum here. For sure that's there. But I get worried when he says the nature of human and it's talking about behavior. Once again, I'll get to why that's spooky. That could be spooky. Here we go.
Homeostatic balance with the ecosystem, while also, of course, maintaining balance with our shared needs and basic nature. There is such a thing as a toxic sociological condition, even though people like to look the other way. A condition that harms people on average on the population level. In that, from an epidemiological public health perspective, you have to pay attention to the average conditions that add or detract from public health. In that, and I know I've talked about this before, but it's worth pointing this out.
Now, that's the weird one because I've had these arguments about systems and shit like that. They're like, systems are, like, there are systems that are inherently evil, right? And usually the one that comes up, they'll say slavery, right? Actually, probably mostly been capitalism, but when I get through the capitalism part, right? And I still maintain the argument that systems are neutral. It's all about the people that are occupying and what they're doing, right? Uh, so they'll bring up capitalism. They'll say, well, you have to be greedy in order for your business to survive because everyone else is being greedy too. Like, well, does that have to happen? Theoretically, no, right? Theoretically, you could do some sort of thing where it's like, oh, all my workers have as much of a say in the company as I do. It's not written in law, but we practice. That's how we practice things. We're all paid equally. We all get paid the same amount. We use the leftovers to enhance our product that we're making or whatever, or enhance the business somehow. Also, we have to write it in law that we tax people to make sure there's no whatever homeless or someone without health care or whatever the fuck. And it's like, well, is theoretically speaking, like charity exists. They could literally just like, I freely give my money to these guys who don't have a house or food or whatever the fuck. Right? The super rich are like, fuck yeah. I am purposely giving money to blah 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 and allocating it to these people. But we're just not calling it taxes. It's not a demand in law on paper. Once again, theoretically possible. Is that the most efficient way? For me, I'm lazy. I'd rather just be like, if I was like a rich person, I'd rather just have like, oh, you make this much a year, okay, allocate this. You just pay this thing we call taxes, and it'll just give it to whoever needs it. Yeah, okay, I'm lazy, so here you go. Here's my money. Uh, what else? Okay, so then there's also the slavery argument, right? And then basically my counter to that is like, is freeing slaves a part of slavery? Is that a part of the system of slavery? You know, the traditional American slavery we've had here. Like, is there a law that says slaves must be slaves forever? Or is there like a freedom process? Now, let's say we're living in this system that's called slavery, and without anyone writing a law, all the slave owners are like, yeah, you're all free to go. I'm writing it, I'm signing a contract that says this person's free to go now and to live a free life. And you know what? I'm going to use all this money and wherever you want to go. You want to go back to where you came from? You want to move over here? Do you want to start? You want, you know, 40 acres and a mule? I'll provide that. Is that likely? Probably not. But is it theoretically possible? Yes. Which says what, scientifically speaking? Says the human element overrides the systemic element. Just saying. Not saying they're not influences. Sure, systems are influences. So is a bottle of Coke, or a bucket, or a rock, or a rainy day. That's also an influence. They're all influences. We're influences of each other. We're influences of ourselves. On and so forth. All right, here we go.
Logical condition, even though people like to look the other way. A condition that harms people on average on the population level. In that, from an epidemiological public health perspective, you have to pay attention to the average conditions that add or detract from public health. In that, and I know I've talked about this before, but it's worth pointing this out in context here, a population with great socioeconomic inequality is one with a destructive precondition that leads to many negative health outcomes. We sacrifice the positive and stabilizing health attributes we could have if we had a more egalitarian society, and provably so, literally for the sake of economic growth, resulting in great imbalance due to the lack of access and deep inequity spread across both domestic societies and across nation states.
So, once again, all right, the notion of an egalitarian society. I mean, would it really be that unless the people itself changed? Would it really be that? Like, what if you have 40? I always say this. What if you have 40 George W. Bushes running around in your new system thing? Like, laws don't stop them from doing shit now, right? Can't these guys create a suspension of disbelief as to why? Like, maybe they're doing the right thing. Maybe they write a new law. They overwrite your law with a different law. And it's like, fuck. Writing laws that counteract other laws that counteract other laws, and it's like, hey man, you don't have to be a douchebag. Maybe that's where the answer is. Like, hey, George W. Bush, you don't have to be a dickhead, man. You don't have to try to like fucking take advantage of people and shit like that. There's other ways to handle things where you can live a quote unquote happy life, or at least a happy social life. Right? Trying to combat something like greed with writing laws written on paper, silly. Silly. An illusion. Just like the idea of writing a law on a paper stops murder. It doesn't. It's an illusion. It is. It could be a solid band-aid, I guess. Solid deterrent from people doing bad things, but it does not stop bad things. It doesn't stop malicious behavior, malignant behavior. Like, it doesn't stop it. Point blank, period. And then that's been the constant argument in the political realm for years and years and years. I get it, but let's call it what it is: an efficiency argument. An efficiency argument. It's not a solution. Just how do we efficiently move around sociologically, as opposed to a moral standard. That's different. Moral standard is much different. So I'm gonna stop it there as far as playing the Peter Joseph stuff, and I'm just gonna add in like, the stuff I like to focus on, the woo-woo, the psychology stuff. Why it's important that he doesn't skip that step about where does this behavior really come from, or at least having a better way to argue rather than like a preconceived notion of human nature, right? Because I don't believe if his idea of human nature seems to be like, if it is what it seems to be like, right, to where we are straight up like environmentally conditioned to maneuver a certain way, strictly environmentally, or even biology to some degree. It's like, for me, the dangers of that is that you're kind of playing the game of the quote unquote creeper predator class in the first, like your ideologies are like lining up together. They're almost like teammates. This materialistic sense of who a person is right there with the quote unquote elites, right? The greedy motherfuckers. If they're looking at people as, this might get conspiratorial, but if these guys are looking at people as like maybe inherently lesser, right, on a genetic level, things like that, like, guess what? This notion of the environment is dictating people's behavior type thing, like that fits in as a slice. It works in tandem with their notion of how people operate. And guess what? For people who are not the quote unquote elite, but believe the environment is dictating people's behavior, like a system, that biological notion of these creepers is also like a little slice of your ideology, right? Because clearly, if you don't have, the ears to hear or to experience, or the senses to experience the environment, you're not being conditioned by it, which means, but you're still a human, still behaving in the world. which is saying that oh no, the stuff that isn't covered by the environment is just your genetics. It's very weird, like yin yangs of each other, but it's almost like a absent of a person, of a self, of something that can choose to do better, that can choose to do good. It's absent of it in both regards. It would be for me, a dark, twisted, cold, kind of lifeless yin yang of environment and genetics. That's the spooky part. And also, once again, here's where it can also be spooky. If you decide to say that it's this environment that's making people behave this way, if that's the fucking culprit, the environment with a slice of genetics, then what would the solution to that be? You want to stop, material suffering of people, and the only way to do that is to change how people are acting in the world. Guess what the solution for that problem is? It sits in the realm of conditioning, aka propaganda, be real, say manipulation, brainwashing. Those terms apply, right? They do. If you're telling me that the kid on the street who was robbing stores, you're telling me the way to fix that is to make sure he has a healthy standard of living, and then he will automatically stop. Not my notion, which would be like, oh, it's most likely he would stop stealing if he had a comfortable life. There'd be no reason to steal, so I don't see him doing that. Instead of saying most likely would stop doing that, it's straight up saying like, no, he will stop doing that. To where it's like, okay, where's the kid at then? There's no kid there. It's literally like literally AI that's being programmed by mommy nature. Physical, material mommy nature. That's the spooky part. What's your solution for that? If people are strictly behaving based on their environment, physical environment, and their biology, the answer to that is quite dark. Because you're going to have a dictator. Someone's going to have to be the quote-unquote most rational, the most objective person in the world to decide what other people's experience should be in order to get them to behave a certain way. And guess what that is? Right? Isn't that the shit we see today as far as the creeper elites and what they do? Isn't that what they do? Am I tripping? I'm just saying. That's the dangers of it. Because like I said, I believe Peter Joseph means well. I truly believe that. And that his ideas for the world are to try and make the world better. I truly believe that. But if someone took his idea and ran, and if you follow the logic, the only way to stop this person from murdering is to lock them in a chamber, tape them to a fucking chair, hold their eyelids open, and show them puppy videos all day. Fucking Clockwork Orange them. It's a more extreme version, but that's essentially the same thing, right? To force feed people experiences to get them to behave a certain way. What do we call that? I'm just saying. Right? None of this is easy. But at the same time, it's like, come on. Right? That's the elephant in the fucking room right there. Alright, that's it for this video. My little live clip. Don't forget to share, support, hopefully donate to Devon's Journey to Recovery, helping out victims of Africom, helping out Cohen Daly, and make some donations to Stevie, aka Redneconomics, and also Sleepy J. Get him some coffee. And with all that said, give this video a thumbs down.